Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Tirza Forrester, and I have with me Eric Maisel. He is a coach and has coached hundreds of people on how to be coaches through his online certification program. He has written many books on creativity and is a major leader in the field, and I'm really excited to have him. So Eric, just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you started, and how you got to where you are now.
A little bit about where I started and how I got to be here now.
Yes.
Well, I was born in the Bronx and grew up in Brooklyn, and I thought I was a math and science boy growing up. That's what I thought I was doing. But then I discovered that wasn't sort of human enough for me, and it stopped interesting me. And I graduated from a math and science high school when I was 16, so very young, and I started college at 16, too young. And so I flunked out of college when I was about 18, and then I enlisted in the Army. And then when I got out, I went to the University of Oregon and I got a degree in philosophy, which is one of those things you do when you don't know what you're doing. So it took me a while to figure out what I really wanted to do. And at about 24, I started writing my first book. And I've written 50 or 60 books since then. I started out as a novelist. I've done lots of nonfiction. I had a ghostwriting career. And then in my early 30s, I wasn't making enough money from the writing to support our young children and our family. So I retooled and I became a California licensed family therapist, working exclusively with creative and performing artists. Then I segued from that into coaching. I became a creativity coach and sort of invented that field. So for the last 35 years, I've worked with creative and performing artists in one capacity or another, either as a therapist or as a coach.
Very cool. That's awesome. So you started as a therapist then. So did you kind of feel like you fell into that, or was it intentional?
Well, I knew that the psychology of creative folks interested me. I knew the psychology interested me. Uh, Becoming a family therapist, the only reason I did that is that it was a shorter route than becoming a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist or something else. So there were practical reasons to become a licensed family therapist. But I think I knew for a long time that I wanted to do something psychologically minded. Then when I became a therapist, I saw pretty quickly that I didn't actually believe in the model, in the paradigm. I didn't think I was diagnosing mental disorders. I thought I was just helping people with the challenges of living. And I've been an advocate for a different paradigm for a long time. I'm in what's called the either critical psychology or critical psychiatry camp, where we don't believe in the mental disorder labeling system. That's a whole nother subject. But
Yeah.
that's why I moved from therapy to coaching. I actually didn't believe in the therapy model.
Okay, that's interesting. My husband's he's finishing up his master's degree in therapy right now. So, but
Well, tell him to stop it.
I'm sure he'll be joining me on my adventure sooner than later. But his interest is actually in therapy through the outdoors and discovering yourself through that.
Uh-huh.
So yeah. So he's kind of a little bit more for the unconventional as well. Uh,
That's good.
yeah, yeah. Um, but anyway, that's cool. Did you finish your sentence? I don't know if I interrupted you or not.
I think I did. I think just the end of the sentence was that I wasn't really believing in the therapy model, still don't. Um, I write for Psychology Today, a blog called Rethinking Mental Health, and I serve as the editor for Parent Resources at a website called Mad in America. So I'm doing a lot of work in the area of sort of refuting the current mental disorder paradigm.
Hmm.
So that's not directly related to the creativity stuff, but it's something that's important to me.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So in all your work, what do you think has been the most profound breakthrough as far as helping people find their creativity? What do you think has been over the years has been successful for people? And it could be multiple things.
It probably is multiple things. I think just underscoring the reality of making mistakes and messes, the reality of process, the letting go of the idea that the thing you're working on has some guarantee of succeeding, and just taking a more adult and mature attitude about creating a body of work as opposed to attaching to the thing you're working on, because only a percentage of the things we do is going to work.
Right.
And it's hard. Intellectually, everybody gets it, but in the body, it doesn't feel good to think that you might spend 2 years on this novel and it may not turn out well. It just doesn't feel good. But people have to get a very mature understanding that is what they have to do. They have to show up and not attach to the outcome. When they get that idea, or they get the idea, when they get it in their body, when they buy it viscerally, then they understand the importance of showing up better, that it's really about showing up. Tchaikovsky said, I'm inspired every 5th day, but I don't get that 5th day if I don't show up the other 4 days. So there's a reality to inspiration, but we don't get inspiration if we're not really working.
Right.
So I think the headline for creatives is the idea of the regularity and routine of working, of just showing up and not attaching to the outcome, not getting too worried about whether this particular piece is going to be a success or not, but just treating it as a real practice, just as a meditation practice or a yoga practice or any other kind of practice. It's a creativity practice, and you just go do it each day without sort of creating crises and complaints and without complaining about how hard it is. I think people want to put a kind of smiley face on creating as if it should be a joy or something. It's sloggy hard work a lot of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really true. And I think a lot of artists and creatives tend to struggle with routine. And I know I do. Just like setting that schedule, like you work a, 9 to 5 job, like having that routine, I think is profound.
It is profound. And Pavarotti had a quote I like. He said, people say I'm disciplined, but it's not discipline, it's devotion, and there's a big difference. And so what I'm talking about is not really discipline. It's not the discipline of showing up every day. It's really more loving one's own work and being devoted to the work and showing up by virtue of the fact that one's loving one's work, not because one's disciplined. I'm not sure the creatives are particularly disciplined. We may be particularly undisciplined, but it's not about discipline. It's really about manifesting our love for our medium, our ideas, advocating for our own thoughts and feelings. So it's much more about devotion than discipline.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks for the clarification. That makes a lot of sense, because if you're not devoted to something that you're doing and you don't have this deep sense of passion behind it, then why are you doing it?
Right. And I spend a lot of time writing about and talking about what I consider a paradigm shift from seeking meaning to making meaning. The idea that this meaning isn't out there somewhere at the top of a mountain or at some guru's feet, but that we have to make meaning, and that we have to come to an understanding of our own life purpose choices, that there's no purpose to life, there are only our life purpose choices, what we consider important. So in that picture, for creatives, creating is one of our life purpose choices. It's not the only one. It would be a mistake to think that we can live by creating alone. Artists have committed suicide over and over again because their lives have not been rich enough just by creating. It's not enough. We need other things like relationships and service and this, that, and the other thing. So that's all by way of saying creativity is an important part of life, but actually it isn't enough. And to pay attention to the idea of life purpose choices, multiple life purpose choices, is really important.
Right. That creating in itself isn't enough. It's the collection of things that kind of encompass that, and how creativity can kind of percolate into those different aspects of your life.
Creative in all the different things one does, but creativity per se is not enough to rest a life on. We need more than that.
Yeah. I think I definitely agree, and I'm passionate about getting people to be creative in all those other aspects in their life, and reaching out maybe outside their comfort zone in that way.
Right. And just as an aside, creativity is one of those pliable words, and it means lots of things. And in business, it means something very different from what you and I are talking about. In business, it typically means problem solving or innovation. It's typically what a manager in business would be meaning if he was using the word creativity. And we're meaning it as manifesting potential, that human potential movement way of speaking. And that's what we're talking about, is really making use of our own resources, making use of our potential. And so sort of obviously we could make use of our resources and our potential in whatever we do, whether it's making a pea soup or whatever it might be, we can manifest our potential there.
Right. Yes. Yeah, I totally agree with that. What is the main obstacle or struggle you see in people who are working on their creativity? Maybe someone who's really never explored that or never thought they were creative. What kind of things do you think stop people?
Well, I think there are multiple major obstacles. One is the marketplace. It's hard to sell things. It's hard to make a living as an artist. There really aren't middle-class artists. They're either celebrity artists or poor artists, but not really a middle class. So that's daunting in its own way. If you love something and do it day in and day out, write your poetry, write your music, what have you, and have no opportunity to make any money from it, that's an obstacle, and that'll wear you down over time. So maybe when you're 19, it's okay that it's making no money. But at 32 or 39 or 46, it's really not okay anymore that it's not making any money. So the realities of the marketplace are daunting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the work is hard. I think folks don't understand that they may hate the thing they're working on 2 out of 3 days. And they find that dispiriting and disappointing and depressing, that they're not liking what they're working on. And so, as I say, it takes a certain maturity and understanding that we have to slog through the hard days, and that we may only get, a moment or two of maybe we'll spend a whole year writing a novel and only have 3 or 4 moments of satisfaction that whole year. That's not a lot of moments of satisfaction for a year's worth of work. And yet that may be the reality, that most of those days we haven't been liking the novel or haven't been liking the suite of paintings we've been working on. And so an awful lot of people stop working because they're finding it too hard to continue, just the hardness of it. And I think anxiety is probably the third biggest reason why people stop. Folks don't understand how much anxiety threads through the creative process, because creating is in effect one choice after another. Send your character to Paris, send your character to Madrid, put on a little red, put on a little blue. It's one choice after another, and choosing provokes anxiety. So people don't quite realize how much anxiety is provoked by creating, and they don't realize that the main thing we do to deal with anxiety is to flee the encounter, is to get out of there. So people are running away from their work all the time just because it's making them a little anxious to be there. It's way easier to turn on the TV or to surf the net than to work on one's novel. It's just easier.
Yeah. No decision in that, really.
No decision, and just easier.
Right. So what do you tell people when, or how do you help people get out of that that place of like, I can't do this anymore, or they're just stuck? How have you seen people kind of move past that, or how do you move past that?
Yeah, there are lots of things to say there. Basically, I just want to get an agreement that you'll show up. That's really the first thing, is sort of a new commitment to showing up. I try to get people to accept the idea of a morning creativity practice before their real day begins. Almost everybody has to have a real day nowadays, a day job or other responsibilities. If you try to get to your novel after you've been at the office for 9 hours, almost nobody has any mind space left for that, any neurons left for that. So I try to convince folks that if they're going to get to their creating, they probably have to do it first thing, which may mean getting up an hour earlier, which nobody wants to hear. But there are 3 big reasons for a morning creativity practice. One is you'd have a real practice. You'd get a lot of work done over time. So that's the obvious one. The second is less obvious, and that is that you would get to make use of your sleep thinking. You get to make use of what your brain's been working on through the night, which is actually very valuable stuff. So by turning to your creative work first thing in the morning, you get to use what your brain's been thinking about all night long. And that's actually a big deal. And then the third reason, going back to the idea of meaning and life purpose, by getting to your creative work first thing in the morning, you will have the experience of having made some meaning on that day already, and the rest of the day can be half meaningless and you won't get depressed. It's important to start with something meaningful each day. So That's probably the biggest thing I try to get on the plate with a new client is this idea of committing to a morning creativity practice.
Yeah, that's good. I've been working on that, trying to get up earlier. So, I have that quiet time, do something meaningful in the morning. So I'm glad you said that because I think that has really helped me. Even the days when I'm like, oh, I don't want to get up.
That's right.
But
And if it's a new habit, new habits take 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. New habits take a long time. So
yeah,
if somebody wants to try this and wants to institute a morning creativity practice, you just have to forgive yourself if you don't get up on Monday, and then try
mm,
again on Tuesday, and forgive yourself if you don't get up on Tuesday, and try again on Wednesday. You don't want to just throw in the towel after 2 or 3 days and say, I'm not a morning person, or this is ridiculous, or what have you.
right,
That's not really honoring the process
right.
to throw in the towel that fast.
Yeah. And I think, what was I going to say? Um, Yeah, and I think that tends to, for people to, especially artists and creatives, tend to be such perfectionists, and forgiving yourself for maybe not getting up that first day and keep going to, let that anxiety go, because that can bring anxiety in that, but just giving yourself forgiveness.
Forgiveness and getting back on the horse. For me, it's both things. It's a little too easy to just forgive yourself,
Yeah,
not do any work. So it's
right.
both things.
Yeah,
It's both forgiveness and recommitment.
yeah. Acknowledging that, you didn't quite make your goals for the day, but you're going to try again.
That's right.
Yeah.
And also having modest goals can be really smart. Often, if I ask a writer, how much time he or she wants to commit to, often a writer will say 20 minutes. It seems to be a very usual number that people come up with. That's fine by me, because it's sort of like potato chips about not being able to eat one potato chip. Once you're there for 20 minutes, most people stay put and write longer than that. So it's really about getting there. You don't have to have huge goals in mind, like 2,000 words or 90 minutes or 7 hours or this or that. Just showing up is really important.
Yeah, I think that is some of the things that other people have said too. Just, start small, don't overwhelm yourself.
That's right.
Yeah. Um, my next question is, what do you see changing in the next decade as far as creativity in the workforce and the shift in roles people play? I know this is a hot topic right now, and I just thought I'd ask you what you think your opinion is on that.
I don't really know, because there are two different parts to the question. One is, if by workforce you mean a solo entrepreneur or you mean somebody working for somebody else. If you're working for somebody else, then they don't want you to manifest your creativity. They want you maybe to problem solve or innovate, but they don't want you to be secretly working on your novel on their time.
Mm,
So creativity in the workplace is a complicated subject, because what a boss means by creativity is not what a worker means by creativity.
right.
So that's complicated. But if you mean for a solo entrepreneur, that's what's going to increase more and more as we move forward. And that is just the very idea of solo entrepreneurship. We're going to have to wear all these multiple hats. We're going to have more hats to wear. We're going to have to know things that we don't want to know about technology and marketing and promoting and all of this stuff. And every one of us may be a little empire of one. There'll be exceptions. There'll be people who are still traditionally published, and there'll be celebrity actors. There'll still be a top tier of folks. But the other 99%, if they want to manifest their creativity in a way in which their products have an audience, they're going to have to be solo entrepreneurs.
Yeah. Yeah. And I see that definite shift between, the shift is happening. And I think it's really fascinating, and people are like, oh, I need to figure out how to be creative. And, the workforce is shifting, and, realizing like, oh, I do need those I do need to use my creative side of the brain.
Right. And also there may be some necessary letting go of ego pieces and dreams. Like, many writers want to be traditionally published, but it may make more sense to self-publish nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Self-publishing doesn't have the same ego cachet, it doesn't have the same feeling, yet it may be the smart thing to do. So writers have to think, every artist in all the genres have to think through whether the traditional ways of doing things actually make sense to them, or whether doing it on their own is just the better way to go. If you have a manuscript and you try to sell it traditionally, it's going to be 2 years before it comes out if anybody wants it. And if you self-publish, it'll come out tomorrow. That's a savings of 2 years.
Right. Yeah.
And may not meet your sort of ego fantasy needs, but you'll get the novel out in 2 days rather than 2 years. So these are important considerations for creatives.
Yeah. And I think, lost my train of thought. What's I going to say? Yeah, I think it's really shifting, and people have to really be creative these days about the traditional ways of doing things. I think are shifting in that way, and I think learning to be creative in also that way, and how to make decisions on those sort of things, whether you're going to publish traditionally,
right. And to accept that that's kind of an honorable use of your creativity as opposed to a burden or just a pain in the neck or something. I kind of enjoy the marketing and promoting. Virtually none of my clients do enjoy it. And so I just try to help them shift a little in their thinking about, well, it's really not about marketing and promoting. It's about being an advocate for your work. Don't you want to stand behind your work? Don't you want to help your poor, sad little novel out into the world? Don't you want to befriend it? So I try to help them shift their thinking from, I don't want to market and promote, to, okay, I guess I have to be a good friend to my work.
Right. Yeah. Reshaping that mindset versus, I don't want to be that person that, steps out there and bombards people with my stuff versus, this is my work and I'm proud of it and I want to share it with you.
Yeah. Or I do want to be that person who bombards people with my work, only in a very nice way.
Right. Yes. In a kind, encouraging, upbeat way. Yes. Yeah. I think that's really, really good. What advice would you give someone who is afraid to start something creative? And this is someone who maybe has never, maybe was told from a young age that their creativity in some way was wounded. They were told that they weren't creative or couldn't paint or whatever. What would you tell them to kind of get them to a place of?
There are lots of things to say there. One I would say is just to err on the side of completing things rather than abandoning things. Just holding the idea that completing is useful, is a good idea, because most of the people that you're speaking of abandon things very quickly. They take a class in this, and by the third week in the class, for some reason, they're no longer interested or what have you. So I would say, try to complete things just for the sake of having a full experience and full experience of process. That's A. And then B, and there would be a zillion things to say, but just as a second thing, intellectually, we understand about taking risks. We just don't want them to feel risky. And so that would be a change to make, is allowing yourself the understanding that risks are actually going to feel risky, that you're going to have some anxiety in doing this, and that has to be okay. You have to embrace the reality of anxiety rather than always fleeing from the experience of anxiety. It is risky to create because we don't like to see things failing. We don't like to make mistakes and messes. It's going to be risky. Accept that at a body level, that it's going to feel risky, and do it anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's great advice. Yeah, anything that you're going to do out of your comfort zone is going to feel risky, especially creative things. So yeah, start what you finish, and acknowledging that it's going to cause maybe some anxiety, I think, is being in tune with our bodies that way.
Yep.
Yeah, accepting that versus like, oh my gosh, I can't handle this while you're in the middle.
And making big dramas out of little things. I mean, a lot of the anxiety that we're feeling is mild anxiety, but the way we speak to ourselves, we turn it into large anxiety.
Yeah, it's all about that self-talk and what we say to ourselves. Yeah, I think it's crucial. Is there any story or something you'd like to kind of leave our audience with before we wrap up?
I have nothing particular comes to mind. I would just encourage folks to aim in the direction of just better routine and regularity, kind of hold those words as maybe more sacred as opposed to horrible words, and just to start to build the habit of a regular creativity practice.
Yeah, that's great. Um, well, I just want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to interview with me, and thank you for your words of wisdom. Um, Eric has a gift or a promotion, and the link to it will be below us. So you can go check him out and more of the work that he does, because he does a lot of incredible work and written many really incredible books that you should definitely check out. So I just want to thank Eric for taking the time out of his day again to be with us, and we'll see you in the next video.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you.